So our next error is going to be diction or misused words. So if you see a diction error, what it's going to be is it's going to be a word, a real word, that looks very similar or sounds very similar to a word that makes logical sense in the sentence. So for instance, we have I can with certainty state that blah blah blah. And they'll turn it into I can with certainly state. So if you see those two words, one above the other, the only thing that's different is there's a T in one and there's an L in the other. However, that difference of one letter makes the meaning and also the way that the word fits into a sentence completely different. So you can say I can with certainty state, but you can't say I can with certainly state. So if you see a diction error, it'll basically be a word that looks and sounds extremely similar to the right word, but doesn't actually logically make sense in the sentence, or doesn't grammatically make sense in the sentence. That also is completely same error. Okay, so the other thing that they'll do is they will give you words that are commonly mistaken for one another. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll write down some of the pairings of these words so that we can go over them, because this is a pretty common error that tends to trip up a lot of people. So the first one we can look at is among versus between. So among is 3 or more things, and between is 2. So if you guys know what comparative and superlative form are, it's what we use when we're comparing things. It's the same basic rule for that. So if there's 2 things, then you can use between. So between this and that, this is better. And among has to be at least 3 things. Watch out for twins and triplets, because it's an easy way for them to indicate there are 3 people, for instance, without saying there are 3 people. So among is, among all of my friends, I am the best runner, let's say. But between Janice and I am the better runner. So notice among matches best, which is superlative, and between matches better, which is comparative. Okay, let's go ahead and look at another one. So effect and affect, these ones get mixed up all the time. The easy way to remember them is that A comes before E. So an affect has to happen before an effect can happen. So I'm going to write A before E, so you guys can remember that rule. But the idea is that an effect, and normally be affect, but it's way easier if I read it with a really strong, harsh E, that's some sort of result. So one effect of studying for the ACT is having higher confidence. Very nice. So it's a result of some sort. Versus affect is like how you're influencing something. So I don't want to affect the game, so I'm not going to tell our starting pitcher that his dad is really sick, let's say. So that's actually terrible, and I should tell him that. But if I don't, I'm not affecting the game. Otherwise, I would be affecting the game. So effects are results, and to affect something is to influence or change it in some way. So you're having an effect on it. Okay, let's look at another. Okay, there's a whole slew of these words, but here are 3 of the kind of most commonly mixed up ones. So many, fewer, and number versus much, less, and amount. So when you're trying to figure out when you use these words, the idea is that you're looking for countable versus non-countable nouns. So if I have many, that's going to be a countable noun. So what I mean by that is that I could literally look at the noun or nouns that I'm describing, and I could count them. So many could refer to purses, it could refer to chickens, houses, people. It's something or could be, people as well, that I could literally count. So if I'm going to use much less or amount, that's when I don't have countable nouns. So uncountable nouns. So in this case, uncountable nouns, you couldn't actually count them. So for instance, like wildlife, unless I am talking about a specific number of bears and foxes, mountain lions, etc., wildlife is kind of a big general overall idea. I can't really count that. So wildlife would count as a non or uncountable noun. You also can use things like butter, sugar, coffee as uncountable nouns. They would be countable if you specify a cup of sugar or a tablespoon of salt, that sort of thing. But if there's no specification, then you're using it as an uncountable noun. So all you have to do is ask yourself, if I lined up these insert noun here, could I count them? And if you can't, then you're going to use much less or amount. If you can, it's many, fewer, or number. Okay, and the last one of these that I'll go ahead and write down is whose versus whose. So the first whose, that is going to be a possessive pronoun. So like, whose necklace is this? So we're looking at possessive pronouns. Possessive pronoun. And whose is going to be who is, or actually who has as well. That also counts. So who is or who has. Alright, so there's tons of words that you could see if you were looking at a diction or misused word kind of problem, but I've listed actually the ones that are most commonly tested on the test, and also the ones that tend to get mixed up a little bit. And you know what? There's one last thing that I'll cover on this because it does show up pretty often, and that is when you're dealing with that and which, they will often have an error where they will refer to people as witch, and a person is not a witch unless we're talking about Halloween time and they're on a broomstick with a pointy hat. So that and which are only used for things, never for people. So used for things, not people. Okay, and that last one does show up pretty often, so it's a good one to go over as well.